Welcome, welcome this afternoon to Lower Your Infectious Load, a webinar from Dr. Carolyn Dean. We are joined here. We'll be with you for the next hour. Thank you to all those who are already live with us on the chat. And we're happy to bring you this information for those of you who have not yet experienced the wisdom, the direction, the inspiration, and the clarity of Dr. Dean. Let me let you know that she is a doctor, an MD, and a naturopath as well. And she's been helping people through her own medical practice and all kinds of outreaches and information for nearly 50 years. She's seen it all the gamuts, all the fads, all the trends, everything coming and going, you know, just like the mini skirt, it comes, it goes, just like platform heels, it comes, it goes. But there are those classics that never, ever you get out of your wardrobe. For example, let's say your little black dress. Well, Dr. Dean has the little black dress of formulas, ladies and gentlemen. She's got great information and consistent good information that's going to help you lower your infectious load, improve your health, and there's a lot of great content in here too that is going to surprise you, I think, very much so. So without any further ado, I welcome Dr. Carolyn Dean.
Thank you, Ginny. Thank you so much. And thank you, Chad. Chad's running the board for us. So let's get right to it on our second slide, what you will learn. This is kind of our executive summary. And through my webinars, I do tend to have a lot of words on the slides, and that's because this is about educating you so that when you want to go through the slides again, you'll find them in our archives. You can you can listen to the words as well, but you can also just skim through the slides and get the information you're seeking. So you're going to be learning about exposure to pathogens doesn't mean you have to succumb, the role of yeast toxins, a little insight into Lyme disease, what factors are promoting infection, and what supports your immune system. The next slide, I talk about facts. So the facts are, it's very basic. We're all loaded with microorganisms, and they are waiting for their moment in the spotlight. And if our body's out of balance, our immune system will be out of balance, and our microorganisms will be out of balance. And the ones that want to rise and shine, they'll start to take over. The next slide is numbering the microbes and your human cells. Now, we've often heard that it's a 10 to 1, like 10 trillion microbes to 1 trillion human cells. But someone's finally done the math, and these are apparently the statistics. And the microbes are still winning according to numbers. And what I say is we can't afford to make our microbes mad, and that's what we've been doing. We've been stirring them up and throwing them out of balance with medications like antibiotics that creates yeast overgrowth, the chemicals, even the chemicals, mercury and chlorine. They work like antibiotics in the body, so they kill off good and bad bacteria and allow yeast overgrowth. High sugar diet feeds yeast. So and I know I'm focusing on yeast. I've always focused on yeast, and the next slide will show you why. Back in 1993, Bob and I moved to New York. I was supposedly on a year sabbatical from my practice in Toronto, my family practice. I was going to take a year off and just rest, but I get nabbed by these folks who are doing a natural AIDS and chronic fatigue treatment. So the importance of that work that year was that every patient we tested was positive for every infection on our test list. And what that taught me is that infections are at the base of certainly those chronic diseases, and I realized they're at the base of most diseases. Then I struck on yeast because everybody had yeast, 100%. People wouldn't, these AIDS and chronic fatigue people wouldn't necessarily have high levels of all the infections. They had some of everything, but yeast was 100%. So what I determined was that, okay, yeast is the basis. Yeast is a natural organism in the body. It has to be there. It's there for a purpose. If we look at our genius human body and there's naturally yeast in the body, it serves a purpose. So I said, okay, yeast is normal. The other organisms, to a certain extent, are normal as well, and they've been getting out of balance. But I focused on yeast because I started realizing it has 178 toxins or byproducts that become toxins in the body when it overgrows. Over the years, we've been looking at yeast, and some people think, well, yeast causes cancer. You would find yeast at cancer sites. So everybody says, oh, the yeast is the problem. But then total biology taught me that no, yeast will congregate around toxic and diseased and cancerous tissue to try to break it down and reabsorb it. So yeast is a bystander. I'm not going to say innocent bystander because it's a bystander that's working on the problem, but then we make it the problem. So there's many layers to this, and it's actually why I really didn't go into a lot of detail over the years that, yeah, if you have yeast, you can have all these other things, and isn't that horrible? Because that's kind of negative thinking, that's giving too much information, when I knew that if you can get your yeast under control, then the whole internal environment of the body will change and you won't be so susceptible to other infections. If you've heard me say that sinus infections are 97% due to yeast and fungus, and that's from a Mayo Clinic statistic. So there's the underlying reason for that infection that has been completely ignored. Every sinus infection is being treated still with antibiotics instead of a yeast protocol. So going on to the next slide, what we've got here is a little bit about Lyme disease. I am not a Lyme expert, and I certainly don't pretend to be. But what I see with Lyme disease is kind of the next kind of step in our deterioration, our health deterioration. It's like AIDS is somewhat under control. We're working on CFS and fibromyalgia, but now Lyme disease is the big problem. And in alternative medicine, a lot of doctors are looking at it and working with it. Allopathic medicine is just now starting to get into it, but they'll never catch up with the alternative medicine. However, what's going on with Lyme disease is all these co-infections. Just like with AIDS and CFS, there's the viruses, the bacteria, the parasites, and what the alt medicine Lyme doctors are trying to do is identify all the infecting organisms, and many of them are trying to treat each one individually. And I've just named a few of them, along with the viruses, bacteria, and parasites. And so my question is, what proportion of these infections, these layers, have to do with the long-term use of antibiotics, causing a weakened immune system, with the underlying result of yeast overgrowth? And we don't know that. Now, in terms of treating Lyme disease, yes, if you're fortunate enough to find the tick bite within a few days or within the day of getting bitten, and you see the bullseye, you go and get the antibiotic, I would recommend that. myself, 3 weeks of antibiotics, and then you clean up the yeast overgrowth that is a result of the antibiotics. But stepping back a little bit from even getting that tick bite, what if your immune system is so strong and you don't have kind of subclinical yeast overgrowth? Maybe the tick bite won't harm you. And not every bite is an infected bite. So that's the dilemma, how to keep ourselves so healthy that we don't succumb. Like I said earlier, not everybody is infected. Okay, and I'll talk about that a little more later on. Let's go to the next slide about the infectious load. So science designates an infectious dose for each organism. That's the amount of pathogen that will cause an infection in the host, but there's a variability there according to the pathogenic agent and the consumers or the victim or the patient's age and overall health. But nobody's really measuring the infectious load. That's what we were doing in New York with our AIDS study, is we were trying to determine the load of yeast, the viruses, the bacteria. And as we know, in the past few years, this whole MRSA business, the methicillin-resistant staph aureus infections, and I've been subject to that myself, this staphylococcal infections. I've always suffered a bit of yeast overgrowth, high sugar intake when I was a kid, the few vaccines that I took when I was a kid, lots of antibiotics for colds and flus, birth control pill, continued high sugar diet. So I had the yeast. And the first year in the hospitals, like third year, we were on the wards a lot. I started to get little nasal boils. And I learned that they were quite common in the hospital because staph was huge even back then. I mean, we're talking about the mid-90s. So every time I get kind of yeasty, I will get a very painful, tiny little boil in my nostrils. And that's my indication of, okay, cut back on the sugar and then lately cut back on the fruit. So I know this is a relevant theory that I'm talking about yeast overgrowth. The next slide, just the whole infection signs and symptoms. I mean, when they get really acute and I'm not going to say chronic, but when they get serious, you'll have your fever, chills, sweats, cough, sore throat, nasal congestion, stiff neck, burning or pain on urination. If it's a bladder infection, vaginal discharge or irritation, if it's a vaginal infection. And some people with kind of subclinical to almost clinical infection signs, they'll get hot flashes as the body develops inflammation and a bit of fever to try to burn off the infection. So they're all there, but doctors really don't start treating until you have the fever and chills and sweats. And I know they treat with antibiotics for anything that looks like an infection. But what happens is there really aren't any signs or symptoms of low-grade infections. We've got yeast overgrowth that does not have low-grade, that does not have symptoms. It kind of remains low-grade. We've got viruses that are low-grade until you get a shock, like my cold sores, my herpes simplex 1 will come out if I get a sunburn on my lips. When the autoclave blew up in my face in the lab in New York, or when I do cold shock therapy too much, when I dive into the cold jacuzzi at the spa. Chickenpox becomes reactivated as shingles. Hepatitis, I became concerned about liver detoxification that people would do when occasionally a person would manifest hepatitis that their liver was sequestering. And then the stress, whatever stress, and a liver detox would bring it out. And then the intestinal bacteria, we go on about the IBS and even symptoms of Crohn's and colitis. And that shows us problems with gas and bloating, etc., that are just diagnosed these horrible infections with nobody thinking, oh, maybe it's a low-grade yeast that's causing an imbalance. So there's all these things that I've been monitoring forever. And as I'm saying in this presentation, I really want to finally get people's attention about what may be happening with these layers of infection, because allopathic medicine and now alternative medicine, they're trying to diagnose these subclinical infections and trying to treat them. And let me explain a little bit more. A diagnosis of a blood-borne infection is with an arterial blood draw for bacterial culture. These are horrible, painful blood draws. We had to do them as interns, putting a thick bore needle into an artery in the wrist to get a proper bacterial culture. And then came polymerase chain reaction testing. They started to do that for HIV, so it could get the small strands of DNA. And what happens is it magnifies these strands. In the beginning, it was like, yeah, you've got all this these HIV DNA, but it could come from a very small pool of HIV, and then as I say, it's magnified in the test. You can look up polymerase chain reaction. The doctor who invented the technique wished he hadn't, because it began to be abused. And the next slide, what's happening now in alternative medicine is that the polymerase chain reaction test is so readily available that alt med doctors are using it to test all these various organisms and giving you this long list of, oh, you've got all these antibodies to these organisms, or you've got all these organisms that shows up in their DNA. We've had customers who've been emailing us about this. Oh my gosh, my doctor says I've got 10 big infections. What am I going to do? So that's why I wanted to do this webinar, to kind of cut this whole scare tactic, cut it off at the pass, because we've always had these infections. When we let our yeast go out of control, then we allow them more of what do you call it, a suitable environment, a susceptible environment in which they can grow. With blood testing for infections, I did Candida antibody testing for years, and well, not that long before I realized in my lab in my basement up in Toronto, I did the antibody testing, and I didn't find it any better than a questionnaire. So that's one of the many reasons why I don't really think all this lab testing is suitable for people. It gets very scary for people when they're told they have all these horrible things going on. The anemia of infectious disease, there are people that say, oh my gosh, iron it must be the problem. People are getting high ferritin. et cetera, et cetera. It's the anemia of infectious disease where the genius body, knowing that iron is very important for all organisms, will take out the iron, put it into storage to try to starve the infections. But that's obviously not the treatment that we want. What we want to do is, what am I saying? Lower the infectious load so that the body won't have to respond with this manipulation of iron. Then there's the whole leaky gut, dysbiosis, biofilm business, the results of all these infections and imbalance, the extensive testing that now a lot of the alternative medicine labs are doing, just constantly testing blood, urine, saliva, the hair for nutrients, testing hormones and amino acids, and thinking that we can manipulate all these levels by then offering, and here's my sarcasm, offering incompletely absorbed nutrients that actually can make things worse. What I always say is just get your minerals in balance, treat the yeast overgrowth, and then the tests will normalize. Maybe we'll do a webinar on what's wrong with testing. I won't go into it much more right now unless people have questions. And then the last energy medicine testing on the slide here, I've railed against this for a long time. These test machines where you hold on to some sort of charger on the machine, and all of a sudden your top 100 problems come out on a printout, and you're given dozens of supplements to rectify these problems. That's not medicine. It is really just selling supplements and scaring the patient in the meantime. The next slide, as I said at the outset, exposure does not guarantee infection. Why don't 100 people exposed to the same, quote, organism, why don't they all succumb? That's what should be studied. And it is most likely due to epigenetic factors, the factors that influence the genes, turn the genes on and off. There's the nutrient deficiencies. And in my world, they start with magnesium deficiency. There's the drugs, there's the chemicals, there's the fluoride, chlorine, heavy metals, there's surgeries, there's all these epigenetic factors that make a person susceptible. And in the next slide, I do talk about total body meltdown. That's my designation for all the various kind of subcategories that a lot of alt med practitioners, they specialize in thyroid, and they specialize in adrenals, or they specialize in the sex hormones, or they specialize in depression, but they all exist in one place in our human body, and we have to look at them as a whole. And anyway, it's enough said there. This is what a total body meltdown looks like, and this is what we're focused on in terms of building up the body's nutrients, treating yeast overgrowth so that the environment that makes viruses and bacteria and parasites at home no longer exists. The next two slides are about the downward spiral. I've actually got this list in the Magnesium Miracle 2017 book. I have it in a number of blogs, I think, and other ebooks. And it's just to remind people of how we got to the total body meltdown, and how it would be awesome if we could get people to stop this downward spiral when they were young, so that they didn't get to the point that most of our customers in their 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s are. All these downward spiral events create the problem. And actually, Chad, let's go to the next slide. I have my slides backwards. We do, in the next slide, start with the diaper rash caused by Candida, the childhood ear infections, and the colic from antibiotics and soy formula, the allergies, the surgeries, the intestine succumb, eczema jumps up from yeast toxins and the allergies, and then treating allergies and inhalers with inhalers that usually have fluoride attached, which blocks magnesium. The colds and flus, the flu vaccines, and the cravings for sweets that are caused by yeast. And then you get your ADHD. And then back to slide number 12, Chad. The downward spiral continues with the mercury in filling our cavities, and acne, mono. That's an Epstein-Barr virus. And another reason why I jumped on this webinar is because there's some medium out there who's saying, oh, well, chronic fatigue, it's really Epstein-Barr virus. And didn't you know that? Yeah, we knew that decades ago, but it's not the only thing. And to make people think it's all about one virus is really inappropriate and unprofessional. And then the bladder infections, birth control pill, the IBS, as I mentioned, comes up into the picture. The chronic sinus infections, always treated with antibiotics. One of our wonderful customer service people, Julie, she gives her testimonial about how it was the 3 decades of treating her chronic sinus infections with antibiotics that were turned around by our total program, and then the addition of the Pico Silver, which we're going to talk more about. And then the thyroid succumbs, and all these symptoms just keep going on and on and on. Chad, jump through the second downward spiral slide and go to whack-a-mole medicine. And this, it's funny, but it's sad, because that is allopathic medicine at its best, beating down the symptom or the organism when it rears its head. And that's what we're faced with. That's our challenge, to try to give people alternatives. And the alternative I give is in the next slide. It's very basic. The RnA ReSet protocol: hydrate your body, use sea salt. The guideline, the numbers, the amounts are right there on the slide. You've all read it. You all get it with your product packages. Then we provide the building blocks for the whole body. We don't just focus on the immune system, but it includes the immune system. It's mostly minerals and the B vitamins in the realign. And then we treat yeast overgrowth. We don't start off treating yeast overgrowth. We want to build the body up first. It's just like the way we build the body up and tell you, don't stop your drugs, don't stop your other supplements, because you came to us on those drugs, on those supplements, and you came to us unwell, or else you wouldn't have come to us. So we give you the building blocks. They're safe to take with anything else you're doing. And then you'll notice very shortly, and if not shortly, within the first month or so, that you're feeling a bit better. And then that's the time to wean off things that didn't work for you in the first place. I know we could probably get faster results if we said, yeah, stop all your drugs, except for all the withdrawal symptoms you have to go through, or stop all your supplements, except all the withdrawal symptoms you'd have to go through. So we're not willing to do that. We want to stay with you on this low and slow approach. And we don't want you to stop. So that's why we have 6, 8 people in customer service, so that we can just be there to encourage you to keep going. Intellectually, you know you're on the right path, and then you'll get your intuitive body acceptance as you're doing the protocol and feeling better. And then we're treating yeast overgrowth, because what we have found is, as the immune system is naturally boosted with the minerals, with the B vitamins, then your own body will start to get rid of yeast, and you'll experience yeast die-off. And the next layer of that is then, in some people, kind of the release of maybe the viruses and some of the bacteria and some of the parasites. And that's where we are adding the Pico Silver to truly support the immune system. And we're not allowed to talk about the Pico Silver as a, quote, antibiotic or anti-infective, but you can read that in the literature. The next slide, I thought at first I'd put in about detox, how there are all these systems that are involved. Detox organs are there to help you, and we just want to support them. And the next slide, again, I thought, well, put in a little bit about the immune system, but it is extensive. It's in the bone marrow. It's all the lymph nodes. It's the thymus. It's the spleen. The lymphatic vessels are as widespread, and I don't know the length of them, but there's as widespread and as important as the circulatory system. You think of all your veins and arteries. Well, the lymph has the same trajectory throughout your whole body. It's huge. So it's there to work for you. It's not a doctor telling you, yes, this antibiotic is what will kill the organism, as if it's taking over your immune system. No, your immune system is awesome, and we just want to support it. And the next slide, what supports the immune system? Everything. Protein, vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids. I determined early on in my medical practice that you really do need protein to treat hepatitis. There's this, I guess it was just a one after the other appearance in my medical practice of vegetarians who had hepatitis who couldn't get rid of it. And I did some research, and I said, okay, you need protein. If you want your body to heal, you have to have protein. It's one of the reasons why we have our restructure as a whey, rice, and something else protein. My mind just went blank, so that at least vegetarians could get a good source of protein in the whey, and the whey supports glutathione, which supports the immune system. Vegans will avoid that, but seriously, if you want to build protein, most people really do require animal protein. And I know that flies in the face of what we think is happening in natural medicine, that you should be a vegan or a vegetarian. But as I've said many times, only 4% of the total population in North America is vegetarian or vegan. And I mean, that should tell you something. People, if vegetarianism were so incredibly effective in keeping us healthy, more people would be doing it. And there are many other reasons, of course. So the next slide, what weakens the immune system? Stress, exposure, yeast toxins, environmental toxins, chemicals, and drugs. You heard it over and over again. Now, we can help ourselves by dealing with stress. We can try to stay away from infectious organisms. We can treat our yeast. We can try to stay away from environmental toxins and chemicals and drugs. All that is difficult. But what we've built into our total body reset protocol, especially with our magical RNA drops, is a way for your body to deal with all these environmental hazards. We want your body to be able to react to the environment, not to be frightened of it, but to interact, react with the environment so that your immune system can handle it. And some of what that involves is lowering your infectious load, because that's something that we can deal with. That's something that we can treat. In the next slide, we look at these toxins, how if we can lower that load, lower the load of all these toxins that are creating antigen, that's the toxin, antibody reactions in the body, then we can stop this cross-reactivity with body tissues where these metabolic products will jam receptor sites in the organs, in the hormones. So we're trying to decrease this toxic environment where yeast toxins are alcohols and acetaldehydes, and where they create an environment that favors the growth of these bacteria, viruses, and parasites. And I know many of you will say, oh yeah, I treated yeast a number of years ago, and the implication is, well, it didn't help me, so why should I go back and do it? Well, this is the time to go back and do it, because this is the underlying reason for your infectious load. The next slide is about yeast treatment. Yeast-free diet, bentonite psyllium, rotating the antifungals, anti-infectives, pico silver. It's now at the top of my list because when we're dealing, we can starve the yeast and we can remove some of the toxins with the bentonite and psyllium, and that does a lot of good. But as the viruses, bacteria, and parasites are kind of coming to the surface, when we get rid of some of this yeast, we do have to use the pico silver in rotation with the caprylic acid, plus or minus on the oregano oil. It's very strong for a lot of people, but there is also the garlic and grapefruit seed extract. On the label, I don't say to take pico silver every day, but in customer service, we're encouraging people who have had chronic infections, chronic sinus, chronic anything, that maybe they do need to take 1 or 2 teaspoons a day of pico silver for, it could be a couple of weeks, it could be a month, and then perhaps take it 1 week a month, that type of rotation. We'll develop that more as we see what our people are doing. There are many layers of customers. Some are very new to the process. Some have been doing all the complete formulas for years, so they're ready to move on to the pico silver. But we're there to support you, as the next slide says, about supporting the body and immune system with remineralizing, with our B vitamins, methylated and food base, and our glutathione precursors. That's in our Realign. So what I'll do right now is jump over to Ginny so that she can tell me if we need to answer any questions right now before we go into, as we usually do, some details about our products and how they're going to be effective to lower your infectious load.
Okay, Carolyn, wonderful. Great presentation. We do have quite a few questions on the board, so let's clear those up. One of the leading questions of the chat when we first got started was from Suzanne, who asked, what do you think about using black seed oil, oregano oil, and megadose vitamin C to lower your infectious load in addition to your great products?
People can do that. As I mentioned, Suzanne, with my experience with oregano oil, Ginny Patel She wrote a book on ulcerative colitis, going over her experience, and she found oregano oil was very strong. Black seed oil, I know Roby Mitchell, my buddy, uses black seed oil. I have not used that, so I can't comment. Megadose vitamin C, that will give you the laxative effect, which will pull out nutrients, as well as maybe detoxing. In our customer population, we try not to make things worse in any way. So that with the oregano oil, it can disrupt the good bacteria, as I understand it. As I said, the megadose vitamin C is going to cause diarrhea, so that'll get in the way of people trying to saturate with the ReMag. So to me, it's a strong treatment that I would not recommend to our customers. But if a person wanted to follow that, they could do that, and then keep us posted on your experience, because that's what we go on. We go on what the feedback we get. We listen to everybody. But just for our regular audience and customers, just stay with the protocols that we're talking about.
Let's go to Gail, one of our great customers, who's asking this question. Carolyn, does coating on the tongue mean there's a yeast problem? If so, can your Pico Silver resolve it?
Coating on the tongue can be from many things. I do say it's yeast overgrowth, but because you can get a coating on the tongue when you're fasting, doing the intermittent fasting, I even do. I don't know if that's a true yeast overgrowth problem. So it can be, but not 100%. And Pico Silver, the way the question came across, Gail, it's like, well, if I have yeast and I take Pico Silver, is that the treatment? No, it's part of the treatment. The treatment does have to be, and I did not put that in the slide, about the prescript assist or some sort of probiotic or gut treatment. So it has to be the diet, the prescript assist, and the antifungals, and the Pico Silver. The Pico Silver will treat yeast, but I wanted to introduce it for all the other infections that can be underneath the yeast overgrowth. As I said in the beginning of speaking with Ginny about doing Pico Silver, it was basically that we knew our chemists could do a much more effective silver than the ones out on the market or the ones we were recommending. And we were right. But it was more just for people to boost their immune system during cold and flu season, or, well, for any sort of immune system infection. But now we realize it does have to be part of the yeast protocol, because the yeast protocol will overturn the yeast and expose the other infections.
Okay, wonderful. And then also let's ask a little bit about if you are testing for Candida and the test comes back negative, but you have all the symptoms, Carolyn, how would you interpret that?
That the test can't tell. There are serious problems with these organism tests, and you have to go by your symptoms. As I said, I did one of the first antibody test kits in my lab. I had the Dr. Vujdani, amazing immunologist, come up from LA and train my people to do these Candida testings. And I would do them along with Dr. Crook's Candida questionnaire, and I got more out of the questionnaire. The testing is not accurate in my experience, so that's why a test can be negative, but you have symptoms all over the place. So you go by your symptoms, you go by your intuition. Your symptoms are the way you follow your treatment protocol with anything. It's the same with testing for magnesium. It's horrible doing the serum magnesium test. It doesn't tell us a thing, but it will make people think, oh yeah, my magnesium's okay, and then they'll go on and do drug treatments or a whole bunch of supplement treatments for what's really a magnesium deficiency.
Okay, wonderful. And what about eczema? A couple people are asking about that. Is it something that's clearly yeast overgrowth, or how do you consider that?
Well, when I used to treat like kids with eczema up in my practice in Toronto, it would often be some sort of food allergy. And then if that didn't clear it up, then it would be the yeast from their mom. It was very often yeast. And then kids would be given cortisone creams that would suppress the symptoms for a short time. And then they would flare up because cortisone creates yeast. So it's food allergies and yeast.
Okay, very good. And also, what about Epstein-Barr virus? Is it something that if you have it early in your life that it can come back again? Does it go dormant? How does it remain dormant?
It does go dormant like a lot of viruses do. If you go, and I'm going right now, EB virus, and you go to the Epstein-Barr virus, Wiki came up. And you go to, what is it, epidemiology or the exposure or I'm trying to think of the word, like how many people have it. 80% of the population has been exposed to Epstein-Barr virus and will show antibodies. So it's just like me saying 80% of the population is magnesium deficient. It's ubiquitous. So to say that it's the only cause of Epstein-Barr virus or chronic fatigue, that's what they used to call chronic fatigue, is Epstein-Barr. That is, like I said earlier, inappropriate, and it's confusing for people. But what I did find, and I think it's in my downward spiral, is that the people who got mono, which is a type of Epstein-Barr, and they kind of never recover from mono, those are the people that sort of go on to have this chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia picture.
Okay, very good. Glenna types in, I've developed osteoarthritis in the thumb. It's very painful. I take the Remag and Remite and Pico Silver. What else do you recommend?
Well, it could be that you need an adjustment. I know one of our customer service people, she had what could have been osteoarthritis in her thumb. She had done a lot of reflexology. She was a reflexologist, so she thought it may have become dislocated. She went to a good chiropractor who also does myofascial release, and in 10-15 minutes, he had released that thumb and that pain. So you really have to look at the mechanics of that thumb too, and see if you can find a chiropractor who works on hands, because the protocol is not going to shift bones. This is why I do recommend like the Egoscue tower to help realign your spine and adjustments in the body from good chiropractors. Same goes for the hands. So check that out. And I'm sure you're using Remag lotion locally to massage your thumb. But if it's just localized like that, you have to look at the physical mechanics and the alignment of your thumb.
Very good. In kidney failure, we are advised to stay away from any kind of protein. Really? How about your protein powder? How would that work? Can we use them, and can we use the entire complement reset at the start?
Yes, the protein powder that we have, some people complain, oh, it's not high enough in protein, but it's balanced, just not just for treating kidney failure, but it's balanced to have fats, carbohydrates, and protein. I think it's only 11 grams of protein per dose. And a lot of people tell us that who have kidney failure that they use it and it's just fine. It's like the body isn't metabolizing protein, not clearing it. But if you go on the complement formulas, ReMag, the magnesium is important for helping metabolize your food. It's involved with, I think it's 3,600 protein receptor sites. So it's really going to help metabolize any protein you eat, but restructure is important. The ReMag is important for anybody, but for people with kidney problems, read the section in my book, Magnesium Miracle 2017. If you don't have the book or don't want to get the book for some reason, just get in touch with customer service at support@rnareset.com, and they'll send you that excerpt, just the words from that whole chapter, because the kidneys absolutely need magnesium. It's been proven in studies. I cite the study and explain how just doing serum magnesium testing keeps people away from using magnesium on a faulty premise. So all the formulas are very important for supporting the whole body, including the kidneys.
We've got people asking questions like, what about intoxing pico silver with end-stage renal disease? Would it cause more renal burden? We've got people asking about stage 3 liver disease. We've got people asking about all these different kinds of circumstances. And Carolyn, I know that in the past, you've talked many times on your radio show that if the body is under the burden of a chronic condition of this level, that the body has to be supported. It's very stressful, and the body requires the support of magnesium and the other minerals to be able to function. Is that an appropriate response?
Yes, absolutely. And all we say to people who have really chronic conditions, maybe on a lot of medications, is to add these minerals slowly. You would look at the pico silver label, for example, and just start with the half teaspoon dose or even a quarter teaspoon dose, and just kind of prove to yourself intellectually and intuitively that, oh, this feels safe, this feels right. Do a little bit of research. Know that our pico silver is almost pure ionic form of stabilized ions of silver. So it's not the form where it's just dissolved granules of a silver compound, which is what colloidal silver is. This is a pure form. We've proven that pure form with our ReMag and ReMite, that it's so well absorbed that it's not precipitating it in any tissues of the body. So with the chronic nature of people's conditions and the sensitivity that some of you have with all the side effects from the drugs, which you can't even distinguish from the side effects of your chronic health condition, then we just tell people to slowly build up their strength so that then they can distinguish, oh, this must be a drug side effect, and maybe I don't need it anymore since my blood pressure is normalized, etc., etc.
Very good. Very good. Glenna typed back in and said her chiropractor x-rayed both thumbs and the radiologist diagnosed osteoporosis, and the chiropractor could not adjust those joints.
Well, that's where building up the bone with, hopefully you're taking about 3 teaspoons of ReMag a day, 1.5 ReMite. You could add the pico silver on the possibility that the cartilage in the joints, as some of our people with chronic shoulder problems have said when they took the Pico Silver, it seemed like it helped their cartilage to the extent that they thought, oh, maybe I had infected cartilage. Subclinical infections. You see what happens with our joints, according to Chinese medicine, which I studied in New York for a couple of years with a master. Our joints are the repository of toxins and infections to direct them away from our internal organs. So infections will go to these joints, and they don't manifest until all of a sudden someone gets a big blowout of an infected joint, the swelling and everything, and then they start diagnosing rheumatoid arthritis. But what happens in the lead up to that horrific experience is that these joints are harboring subclinical infections to protect your internal organs. It just made so much sense when I heard about it. So yes, I would be sure you're doing your ReMag, ReMite. If you're not taking 600 milligrams of calcium in your diet, take your Recalcia and add your Pico Silver. That may be the missing factor.
Very good. Excellent. And Thomas is asking, what can you recommend for my granddaughter's migraine headaches? One of our people on the chat line, Carolyn, typed in and said that it was grains and gluten. But we feel very strongly that it's magnesium related. Do you want to talk about that?
It can be grains, gluten. It can be carbohydrates. I remember one kid patient, he was 9 years old, and he started getting migraines when his mother started feeding him carrot juice. She thought, carrot juice is so healthy. This will help my kid. Remember all the carrot juice fasting that people did? I don't know if you remember, but as you say, I've been through all the fads. And carrot juice was huge back in the day. I tried it. I got yeast. It's too sugary. It's got too many carbohydrates. So it can be those things. That's why we look at any sort of chronic condition. We do look at the minerals first. We look at yeast overgrowth. If you're doing a yeast treatment, you're avoiding gluten, dairy, and sugar to see if that cleans things up. But absolutely, ReMag is the place to start. ReMag lotion for kids can get them through that the taste of the ReMag orally. But absolutely, if you read the migraine chapter in my Magnesium Miracle book, it's just stated very clearly that most people with migraines are magnesium deficient, and magnesium is the treatment.
Very good. Excellent. Well, Carolyn, let's talk. We're at an hour for the webinar right now. We always try to do these within an hour. We always run over. Let's try to talk a little bit about the products and the special gifts that you have today for the people who are listening, and also how they can get a hold of you as this is replayed over and over again. Our webinars always go up in views. Let me just say that support, SUPPORT, at RnAReSet.com is where you can send your personalized emails to Dr. Carolyn Dean. They will be vetted out through the staff. If we have resources that we know of that Dr. Dean would recommend, we will send those to you first. If it requires a little more attention, we'll send it to Dr. Dean. We answer thousands of emails every single week. So we take our work seriously in supporting Dr. Dean, and also we try to get you the best information as possible. So again, support, SUPPORT, at RnAReSet.com. The other thing is that let's just talk a little bit about our products. The Total Body Reset, of course, Chad, if you could show that slide, is the recommendation for this condition in particular. And also what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to approach it. So in the next slide, you'll see that even today, without ordering any products from us, adequate hydration with sea salted water is going to make a difference in your health. Dehydration is common. Water follows minerals into the cell where they work together for optimum absorption and metabolism. You want to have water in your body. Proper cellular hydration lessens edema. So Dr. Dean always recommends half your body weight in pounds. So let's say I weigh 100 pounds. Drink that in ounces of water. So that would be half is 50 ounces of water. If you say, oh my gosh, that's too much, press on and cut that in half. Start with 25 and then make a goal to build up within the week. Every day, adding a few ounces every day. We want to get your water intake up. And when you add a 1/4 teaspoon of the Celtic salt or the pink Himalayan salt, what's going to happen is you're going to notice a little spark, and that's enough to get you started. Then what we recommend in the next slide, Chad, is we start with foundationally with ReMite. And the ReMite, the ReMag. ReMag is our stabilized picoionic magnesium. It was developed exclusively for Dr. Carolyn Dean. There is nothing like it on the market. And all kinds of exciting news coming out later this year about ReMag and what it's doing for the human body. But suffice to say right now that based on the tens of thousands of testimonials that we've received over the last 8 years, we are confident that the absorption in this magnesium exceeds any magnesium that's available on the market right now. It is extraordinarily powerful and it is highly beneficial. There's not a cell in your body that will not utilize this product. There is absolutely no waste whatsoever to this product. So we want you to start with the ReMag, and you can add that to your sea salted water. And then one thing that you might notice is that after 2 to 3 months on the ReMag, sometimes the body starts to let go of yeast anyway, because of the detoxification effect. Magnesium is fantastic. So this is a great beginning protocol for dumping and lowering your infectious load. In the next slide, what we're going to talk about for everybody is we're going to talk about the ReMag lotion. ReMag lotion is also fully absorbed, and it can be used alongside of the oral ReMag to build up your saturation doses. And it can be used, for example, in the case of our lovely friend this afternoon who's been talking about her thumb and that rheumatoid arthritis or that diagnosis or, osteoporosis kicking in. Put ReMag lotion on it. Now you can do that with the oral form too, because it's versatile that way. But the ReMag lotion would be great. And my husband uses it on his face after shaving. That's how gentle it is. It's absolutely fantastic. People love the ReMag lotion. Love it. So if you haven't tried it, you definitely would love to try that. Okay, and then in our next slide, what we're going to talk about in our protocol and the things that Dr. Dean recommends is our ReMite. ReMite is a 12-part mineral that supports the structure and function of all the glands, all the organs, and all the hormones of the body. And you heard Dr. Dean talking a little bit earlier about those detoxification glands. They're not glamorous. They don't get a lot of attention, but they need a lot of minerals to get their jobs done. And ReMite is going to help with that. So this is another critical component of lowering that infectious load, moving things out, and supporting those organs, giving them the power they need to do their jobs appropriately and correctly. In the next slide, one of the things that Dr. Dean recommends, and this is, I call this our Cinderella formula. This is Realign. Realign, I say, is down in the basement doing all the hard work while everybody's up at the party having fun. Realign is not one of those products where you take it and you have like a huge experience where you're like, oh, wow, I can really feel it working. But it is in the body working in tremendous ways. It's got L-methionine, which is a precursor for glutathione, and that works with the liver detox. And we've got L-taurine, again, another sulfur amino acid for liver sulfation detox. So right there, and then with all the B vitamins, which are already methylated, so simple, perfectly compatible for people with the MTHFR. We've got liver detox, immune support, digesting food, blood sugar balance, so many gifts in this little teeny tiny bottle. I just love, love, love Realign. It's like giving a big hug to your liver every single day. And it's a tremendous, tremendous product. And by the way, you'll never find anything that competes. Never find anything blended like this. This thing is it's primo product. The next thing you're going to want to look at in our slides is we're going to talk about Pico Silver. And I have to say, Pico Silver has been such a blessing and a surprise. You know, we always do these things and then we just get such a kick out of how well it works. As Carolyn said earlier, we decided that our chemist, who's extraordinary and gifted beyond what anybody can really imagine, would do such a great job with silver. And we knew that people would have results using silver with the yeast treatment, but we wanted them to have stellar results, you know, the kind of results that people get with Remag. We wanted them to have that kind of a result with a silver product. And so we created it. And boy, I got to tell you, the testimonials are flooding in. It's incredible what's been happening since we've been sending this product to our customers. We know silver's been used for centuries to protect the immune system. Dr. Dean talked about it earlier. This is not a colloidal. This is a stabilized silver ion, and it is a half of a teeny, 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 tiny step away from being a monatomic silver, which makes it extraordinary. And also we know that there's so many studies that have been done on the effect of silver with herpes, with all kinds of viruses. And we can't go into making claims, you guys, you know that, but you've got to read between the lines and figure out what we're saying here and take a chance on it and try it for yourself. It can be used topically. I used it on a cut I got the other day and I was blown away how quickly my skin, it was just like zoop, it just zoop. It was incredible. In the next slide, we talk a little bit more also too about the Pico Silver and just saying that it kind of goes into the details of the way it's made. And also we want to talk a little bit about the dosing. We want you to take it on an empty stomach a half hour away from food and medication, but this is not a strict rule. And if you heard our radio show earlier this week, which this of course is the June 25th radio show here in 2018 for people who be listening to this 5 years from now, we had the most extraordinary experience with the gal who's been using the Pico Silver. She's taking a half a teaspoon, a half hour apart, 2 times in the morning before she eats anything. And her rotator cuff and also other joints and tendons in her body are being healed through this process. We know how supportive it can be of wounds, tissues, and these kinds of things. And we're thinking that it's going that direction. So again, I think it's something that you would want to try out and just experience it for yourself. And of course, then we want you to get right on your computer or call us in customer service and tell us your amazing testimonial because we think you're going to have one. Okay, and then in the next slide, let me also just say as part of what, and we kind of went over these testimonials. They've been woven through the presentation today. Carolyn talked about it. We talked about dental abscesses. We talked about our Julie in customer service who's had cleared sinuses. We have so many great testimonials on the Pico Silver. So I think, again, you're going to really enjoy this product. And then the next thing we want to talk about in the next slide is Restructure. And this is something, Restructure is a fantastic product. It was developed for the cardiac doctor. Dr. Dean bought the formula. She's improved it. It actually has a super boost from the RNA drops in it. The thing I always like to point out about the Restructure is this is a tripod, a rice, pea, and whey protein, the best of all worlds, none of the nastiness of any of them, no casein, lactose, all these kinds of things are not in there. Well, there's like a trace of lactose. This is a great formulation. Carolyn talked about it earlier. So I think you're going to absolutely love the Restructure. And it is so scrummy and delicious. It's perfectly balanced. And gosh, we have people who just, I mean, I love the Restructure. Everybody I know loves the Restructure. It's really a phenomenal product. So that again is part of the recommendation. So as we go into the next slide, the final thing that we love to talk about is our RNA drops. This is our flagship formula. This is what launched the boat sailing off onto the sea. The RNA drops are a tremendous formulation. They were developed by Dr. Carolyn Dean. They are almost in their 144th generation. Exciting things happening later this year with the RNA drops. People have been taking them all around the globe for 8 years now with incredible experiences. And this is everything from a lot of addictions seem to get loosened up with the RNA drops. And we can't really explain that other than it's a biological sugar, meaning it's biologically accurate for our body, and it's fully absorbed. It's got glycal nutrients in it. It's got great lysine in it, which is another very important part of reducing an infectious load. And that applies to the Restructure too. I forgot to say that. We've got a big whack of lysine in the Restructure. Again, reducing that infectious load and boosting the immune system. The RNA drops have a prebiotic and a probiotic effect. But the other thing that's very unique about them is they also have a harmonic to them. Similar to homeopathy, there is a frequency that kind of accompanies them and allows them to be a stress reducer, a kind of a bond breaker. You might have heard that in different kinds of herbal applications. Well, that kind of applies to the RNA drops. So they will help you achieve kind of a detached feeling and a bliss where basically you become less and less worried about your health and more optimized in your body and in your emotions. Very unique, very fun product. Next slide, Chad. So that's where we are with everything that we're recommending, and also Dr. Dean and her generosity. And you know, she is truly a gift giver. Carolyn and I were together a couple weeks ago when we puzzled this all out and figured this out together, that she is literally a gift giver. So she is giving more gifts today, and they're very, very fun. When you go to rnareset.com/silver-gifts, that's rnareset.com/silver.gifts, you'll see all the things that Dr. Dean has in store for everybody today. And some of those great gifts that she has offered you not only include the modules from her completement program, but they also include a special offer on her, not an offer, a special copy of her new Realign book, where she has outlaid all of the details of Realign and why it is so beneficial detox-wise for your body. And then the final thing that she's got in that little gifty gift to you guys is an offer to try that Pico Silver at 30% off. So you can order it with the coupon code that is on that page, and you are going to get 30% off your Pico Silver product today, if that's something you decide that you'd like to do. And with everything that we've said about it, and with everything that we're experiencing with it, Dr. Dean, myself, my family members, everybody, I think you're going to want to do that. So again, you've got a free copy of Realign, the building blocks to detox. You've got modules out of her Completement Now wellness program, all related to yeast, mold, bacteria. And then you've got your special one-time offer to get the 30% off Pico Silver solution. And when this offer passes, it will not be offered again. I can definitely tell you that. Let's see, what else do we have here? Dr. Dean, what do you think about using the Pico Silver in a spray that could be nebulized? What do you think about that?
Well, according to the FDA, we wouldn't be able to say that because we don't have a label to say that. But personally, I think that would be a great idea. Another thing, actually, when you mentioned the cut healing, what I would do for wounds and abscesses where I would be using a clay poultice or even a bread poultice. Instead of using water, I would make the liquid the Pico Silver. I would mix up like a 1/4 teaspoon of Pico Silver with maybe it could be a 1/4 teaspoon or more of clay, and mix it up, and then put that mush on a wound or whatever I was treating. I think that would be awesome.
Okay, excellent. Suzanne is asking if there are other discounts on the other products. No, we're really encouraging people to consider the Pico today. So thank you for offering. And that 30% is very generous. We are not a promoting kind of company that usually does all that, you know, buy 2, get 1 free and everything. That's not who we are. Dr. Dean is really a doctor and a professional, and making these formulas available to the public in such a way that you can take responsibility for your own health. You can make your health choices. You can be empowered by those. And unlike a lot of formulas that are created by doctors, you don't have to go see a doctor or visit a chiropractor or any of these other kinds of tricks that are out there where you have to spend $65 on a doctor visit just so you can get a bottle of magnesium. That's not what we're about. So we're about educating the public and making these things available to everybody as simply and easily as we can, keeping the quality very high, and all of Dr. Dean's content available at no charge, just like the webinars, the books, and all the rest of that. Customer support 24 hours a day, all at no charge. So that's kind of how we've got things set up. But we're excited.
Yeah, let me just say this. I think what we often say in answer to that question about discounts is we don't double our prices of our products in order to then make everything a sale. When I set up the pricing for the products that I priced, I made them as affordable as possible. And that's why we don't tend to wholesale, because that again would mean we'd have to double the prices. So be assured that you're getting good pricing right from the outset, rather than having to wait around for a sale.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent comments, Carolyn. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in this afternoon. Also, just know in our final slide here on the webinar, you've got all Dr. Dean's special resources that we offer 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And that is her Magnesium Miracle, which is at Amazon. You can get a free chapter of that if you email customer support. We've got 8 free books under books at drcarolyndeanlive.com. We've got her Complement Now program, and we've got radio show archives of Dr. Dean talking with people from all around the world about their health conditions and what she recommends. Extraordinary resource. And then, you know, you can Google Carolyn's name. Like sometimes people say, what about kidney disease? Or what about vitamin D? Or how about calcium? And you can Google her name and type in calcium, and her results will come up. And she's written, you know, literally probably over, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 blogs about vitamin D, calcium, and those kinds of things, and their relationship to magnesium. So again, we're so happy to give you everything we've got, the best of everything we've got, and wish you the best of health for yourself and for your family. Carolyn, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
No, just thank you for listening and sharing. Oh, here's something. I'm reading a book by I guess it was a patient of Jack Kruse, Kruse, a neurosurgeon who got into light therapy and epigenetics and the keto diet, etc. And this patient wrote a book about his 3-year struggle with his health and how he finally came out the other end with Dr. Kruse's help. You don't have to take 3 years. You can do this very quickly, within months. Maybe it'll take a year to get to where you want to be 100%. But I'm starting to put out the call in this webinar and every radio show from here on for people to write me their stories. We're going to make a storybook of your success, because that seems to be the only way that we can get the message across to people. It's impossible for us, and we really don't want to be on any mainstream media because that draws too much attention. But to get the information out, to get the story out, I'll take your long testimonial. I know everybody's been awesome about writing me short testimonials. Let's take long story testimonials, put them in a book, make it available free on Kindle and free to people who want to read what to really do, or how you can get healthy by default with our products. You don't have to do much more than just buy them and take them. But then how that transforms a person's life to where then they take so much responsibility for their health that they stay well. So that's the message I want to put out.
All right, excellent. Well, we'll set up a special email for that, Carolyn. And in the meantime, for the purpose of this webinar, email them to support@rnareset.com. And also, we have great customers who are doing great YouTube channels and that kind of thing. You want to send us your YouTube channel, that would be great too. But send it to support@RnA ReSet for now, and then we'll set up a special email to receive all that information and kind of share it with it as we build our storybook for everybody. So how does that sound, Carolyn?
Perfect. I know I just dumped this on you, and immediately you have an awesome response. Thanks, Jenny. Jenny and I, we share a brain, that's for sure. And Chad too. Thank you so much, Chad. Thank you, everybody. Aloha.
Aloha and mahalo. Thank you, everybody. Mahalo, Dr. Dean. Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks, everybody. Use that code SILVER30 on our website before whenever it runs out, Friday night or something like that. And get your silver, and then send us your story and let us know how everything's going. We do love you, and thank you. Mwah! Thank you, everybody.